Sometimes it ain't the big things that wake up the past. Not the birthdays or holidays, not even the anniversaries. No, ma'am. Sometimes it's the smell of cinnamon and nutmeg drifting from the neighbor's kitchen, or the sound of rain tapping soft on the tin roof. Today it was a pie. An apple pie cooling on my windowsill. And land sakes alive, that smell took me straight back to 1961. I could see the kitchen from home, Mama's worn apron strings swinging as she pulled the pie from the oven, and Daddy humming along to the Grand Ole Opry on the radio. Back when all I knew of love came from storybooks and whatever my older sister whispered to me late at night. But it wasn't just the pie. It was what came after. I was folding dish towels, same as any Tuesday, when I caught sight of that blue ribbon box up on the shelf. You see, I keep my letters in there. Jimmy's letters. Tied just the way he left, tight, neat, like he always was. Lord have mercy, I hadn't touched that box in years. My hands trembled just opening it. And there it was, his handwriting. Careful, kind. My dearest Nellie, he always said it like that. My dearest. Like I was his only soft thing in a world gone to war. And I reckon that's when it came back to me. Not just the letters. The whole dang story. The ache of it. The beauty of it. The way it all twisted like a creek through the hills where you can't see where it's going till you already passed it. I sat down right there at the table, that pie smell still hanging in the air, and I just whispered to myself, "You've been quiet too long, girl. Maybe it's time." There's a story I've kept to myself for many years. I suppose I thought it was safer left in the quiet places. But lately I've been wondering if maybe some things are meant to be told, not for the telling, but for the healing. Now don't you go expecting some Hollywood kind of romance. This here ain't no sweet country love song. It's not always pretty, and it sure as sugar ain't simple. But it's true. Every beat of it. Every silence. Every what if I still carry in my bones. I waited for a boy to come back from a war. And he did. But by then, I was already somebody else's wife. I had a baby in my arms. I had a ring on my finger. And the boy I once promised forever to, he stood in the doorway of the church that Sunday, looking at me like maybe forever came too late. I didn't mean for any of it to happen. Life just, it rolls on like fog in a valley, quiet, slow, and before you know it, it's all around you. We didn't have no fancy things. We didn't even have a pot to pee in back in those days. But we had love, and we had hope. And sometimes that was enough until it wasn't. So if you'll sit a spell, I'll tell you what happened. Not because I'm proud of it. And not because it's easy to talk about. But because, child, some stories need the air. Some hearts need the truth. And maybe, just maybe, one of y'all out there's been carrying your own blue ribbon box, waiting for the right day to open it. Well, this is mine. Back then the world was smaller. Or maybe I just hadn't walked far enough yet to see how wide it could be. We lived off County Road 9, past the old sycamore tree, just down where the creek split in two. Blount County was quieter in those days, no big stores, no highways humming. Just fields of corn that rustled like hymns when the wind passed through, and neighbors who waved even if they didn't like you much. Our house was plain wood with peeling paint, but Daddy built it with his hands, so to me it was worth more than anything polished and store-bought. We had a little garden out back. Chickens that always got out of the fence, and a dog named Rufus who wasn't much for barking, but followed me like a shadow. I was the second oldest of 5. Mama stayed home, always stirring something or hanging laundry, humming low under her breath like the wind knew her tune. Daddy worked the sawmill, came home smelling of pine and sweat, always tired but never too tired to fix what needed fixing. We didn't have much, Lord knows there were winters we patched shoes with cardboard and summers we made do with some tea and prayers. But we had each other. And Sunday dinners. And hymns around the kitchen table. I was a quiet girl. Bookish, they'd say. Not much for flirting or fast talk. I liked the feel of warm bread in the oven and the sound of pencils scratching in a fresh notebook. I dreamed of being a teacher once, thought maybe if I read enough and prayed hard, I'd find my way to a classroom of my own. I'd teach spelling and kindness, mostly. I believed back then that good people got good endings. That love waited. That God matched hearts like Sunday shoes, one for each, just the right fit. And that's when Jimmy Monroe came into my little world like a slow storm, soft at first, but steady. He lived 2 farms over, tall and quiet, never one to speak unless he meant it. I first saw him helping his daddy patch a fence, his sleeves rolled up, sweat glinting off his brow. I was 15. He was 18. He caught me watching from behind Mama's hydrangeas, and instead of looking away like a boy might, he nodded. Just nodded, like we already knew each other's names. From then on, he'd wave every time he passed by in his old truck, the kind with the rusted doors that creaked louder than a preacher's knees. And soon enough, he was helping Daddy with the tractor when it broke, coming round with those hands that knew how to fix things. I'd bring him lemonade, shy as a rabbit, and he'd say, "Thank you, Nellie Jean," like my name was something sweet. He wasn't loud. He didn't chase. But oh, he saw me. Not just the girl in hand-me-down dresses and scuffed shoes, but me, the one who wrote poems in the margins of her Bible and saved flower petals between pages. I'd never felt that before. And in those days, feeling seen felt an awful lot like falling in love. I believed truly that good things stayed. That boys who looked at you like that came back around. I didn't know then that the world was already turning faster than I could hold on to. That war was coming. That the little world I'd known, the garden, the pies, the porch swing, it wouldn't always be enough to keep the wind from blowing everything away. But I was young, and hopeful, and full of that kind of heart you only get once, before the bruises, before the what ifs, before the leaving. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew he'd changed something in me. And maybe that's where the story truly began. I remember it clear as crystal, that Thursday afternoon in late May, 1968. The kind of day where the sun hung low and lazy over the fields and the dirt road shimmered like it was holding its breath. Mama was shelling peas on the porch, and I was inside ironing Daddy's church shirt when I heard the mailbox creak shut. Now that sound wasn't unusual. We didn't get much more than feed catalogs and church flyers, but something in my chest gave a little jolt, like a sparrow hitting the window. I don't know why I rushed out there, barefoot, apron still on, hand stamped from the steam of the iron, but I did. And there it was. A letter. Cream envelope, soft edges, with my name written out in a careful, steady hand I hadn't seen in weeks. Miss Nellie Jean Carter, it said, and I swear, child, my knees near gave out. It was from Jimmy. From Vietnam. The stamp was foreign, the ink faint, but the weight of it, land sakes, it was heavier than any book I'd ever carried. I didn't even wait to sit. Just leaned against the porch post and opened it right then and there, with Mama peering over her glasses like she already knew what it meant. The paper smelled like smoke and sodden dust, and his words, Lord have mercy, they reached right into me. He said the heat was near unbearable, the nights were loud, and the days were longer than sin. But he also said this, every time I close my eyes I see you sitting in the kitchen window with sunlight on your cheek. That picture keeps me going, Nellie Jean. And right then I knew. I didn't need no preacher or poetry book to tell me I was in love. Deep, real, grown-up love. Not the kind you dream about, but the kind that roots down and holds fast when everything else is blowing to pieces. My heart beat faster, yes. But it also ached in a way it never had before. Ache and hope, all tangled up together. Mama didn't say much, just nodded and went back to her peas. She'd been young once too. She knew better than to say things like, don't get your hopes up, or there's a war on, Nell. She just let me feel it. And I did. From then on, the letters came every few weeks, careful, folded, always beginning with my dearest Nellie and ending with you're my reason. And each one made me feel older somehow, like I was carrying something precious, fragile, and bigger than myself. He wrote about the boys in his unit, about the rain that never stopped, about dreams he had of our porch swing and my lemon pie. I kept every word like gold in a treasure chest, tucked beneath my pillow, read by candlelight, whispered into the hush of my room when the house had gone quiet. And then came the second letter that changed everything. This one wasn't just words on a page. It held a picture. Jimmy in uniform, smile soft but eyes tired, standing next to a little boy he'd helped find his family after a bombing. On the back he'd written, this world's broken, Nellie. But thinking of you, it keeps me whole. I clutched that photo like it was breath itself. And I knew I was waiting. No dances, no parties, no flirting with boys down at the diner. My heart was already spoken for, thousands of miles away in a country I couldn't even find on a map. That letter didn't just bring his words. It brought the war into my living room. It brought the ache of distance. and it brought the beginning of a promise that would change everything. Started slow like most heartbreak does. 1 week passed, then 2, then 3, and still no letter. I told myself it was the mail routes. Jimmy had said sometimes things got held up. Maybe he was just busy, tired, maybe he was moving to another base. I held on to those maybes like they were gospel truth. But by the time a month had passed, I'd read the last letter he sent so many times I could recite it in my sleep, and still nothing new came. By the second month, the quiet got heavier. It was like the air itself had changed, thicker somehow, like molasses in my lungs. I didn't want to talk about it. Mama would ask real gentle, "You heard anything yet, honey?" And I'd just shake my head and force a smile like my chest wasn't a locked door rattling in the wind. Daddy didn't say much, but he started looking at me like I was something fragile on a shelf, pretty but likely to crack. And then came the whispers. First from Miss June at the church bake sale. Still no word from that Monroe boy. Then from Mrs. Witherspoon, not in solemn like she already knew what I didn't. Sometimes they don't send a letter, you know. Sometimes it just stops. I wanted to scream, but instead I baked. I cleaned. I walked the same path to the mailbox every single day, my breath catching every time I lifted that rusty flap, only to find it empty. Again, the hardest part wasn't not knowing. It was pretending I didn't care as much as I did. Pretending I wasn't afraid that maybe the worst had happened. Maybe Jimmy was gone. Not just far, but gone. Maybe he'd lost his hands and couldn't write. Maybe he'd forgotten me. Or maybe he'd changed his mind. But I couldn't say that out loud. Not back then. Girls weren't supposed to ache like that. We were supposed to be patient, quiet, keep busy with our sewing and smile at the Sunday potluck. Have faith, they said. But faith felt an awful lot like silence. Then Daddy said something that broke the air in two. He came in one evening after work, wiped his hands on a towel and said real plain, "You need to start thinking about what comes next, Nellie Jean. Can't hang your whole life on a ghost." I just stared at him, my throat tight. Mama hushed him. "Charles, don't say that." But he wasn't mean. Just tired. Just scared for his little girl with the empty hands. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. But I went out to the barn that night, sat behind the haystack and did both. Quiet like if I cried too loud, it'd make it real. I remember hitting my fist against the wood wall and whispering, "Where are you, Jimmy?" Like he could hear me from across the world. But he didn't answer. And I hated that I was mad at him. I felt shame, real heavy, soul-deep shame for thinking maybe he'd left me on purpose. That maybe love wasn't enough. That maybe promises didn't always hold up in the mud of war. That's when the first real crack appeared in my hope. That's also when I started noticing things around town again. The way Raymond Buckley would nod real polite when he saw me at the store. The way his little girl would reach for my hand when I helped her cross the churchyard. I didn't think nothing of it at first. I wasn't ready, not even close. But silence has a way of making space. And eventually, something else tries to fill it. I remember how still the air was that morning. Strange, really, it was spring and the dogwoods were in bloom. But the sky hung heavy like it was holding its breath. I'd just come back from the market with Raymond and little Ellie. She'd drawn me a picture that morning. A crooked house with 3 stick figures and a sun with a smile on it. She called it Our Family. And it nearly ended me right then and there. But I smiled, kissed her forehead, and tucked the drawing into my apron pocket like a secret I wasn't ready to name. We got to church a little early, as always. Raymond liked the 3rd pew from the front. Said it was close enough to hear the sermon, but not so close he felt judged. I was holding our son, our boy, asleep against my shoulders, soft and warm, with that new baby smell that makes everything feel quiet inside. My heart still beat uncertain sometimes, but I had settled into the shape of this life. A different life than I'd imagined, but still good, kind, full of small blessings. And then the doors opened. I didn't hear them at first. I felt them, like a wind through the back of the church, colder than it should have been. I turned, and there he stood. Jimmy, just Jimmy. Only not the boy I remembered, not quite. His hair was shorter, his face thinner. One leg gone below the knee, a cane in its place. And his eyes, Lord, his eyes. They were the same. That soft, steady gray that used to look at me like I was the only thing in the world not broken. Everything stopped. My breath. My heartbeat. The sound of the choir warming up. Even Ellie, fidgety as ever, went still beside me. It was like the clock had stopped ticking. Like God himself had paused to see what I would do. And I didn't move. I couldn't. I just sat there, baby in my arms, hands gripping the back of the pew in front of me, knuckles white. Jimmy's eyes found mine. And he didn't look angry. Didn't look hurt. Just tired. Like a man who'd come all that way hoping for something soft to land in, and found instead that the landing was already taken. He didn't say a word. Just nodded. A slow, solemn kind of nod, the kind people give at funerals when they don't know what else to do. And then he turned and walked out. That cane tapped the tile floor in a rhythm I'll never forget. 3 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Gone. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't even cry at first. Raymond looked at me, didn't ask a thing. Just put his hand on mine, firm, steady. I don't know if that made it better or worse. But that night, after we put the children to bed, I sat in the kitchen alone and cried, till the pie crust cracked in my hands. I whispered his name like a prayer I wasn't allowed to say anymore. Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy. Over and over, like maybe it would take the hurt away. But it didn't. That was the day I lost something I didn't even know I was still holding. Hope, closure, maybe even the girl I used to be. And I've never been the same since. After that Sunday, everything just got quieter. Not outside, no, the birds still sang, Ellie still laughed, and Raymond still read the paper every morning with his coffee. But inside me, Lord have mercy, it was like someone drawn the curtains over my heart and left me sitting in the dark. I went through the motions like women do. Woke the babies, made the oatmeal, kissed foreheads, folded laundry. But it was all underwater somehow. Like I was watching myself from somewhere far away, moving, smiling, nodding, but not really living in any of it. Grief's a strange thing when there's no funeral. No black dresses, no casseroles dropped off on the porch, no one to say he's in a better place. 'Cause he wasn't dead, not really. But he was gone all the same. Gone from my future. Gone from the version of me that once waited with stars in her eyes and letters in her pocket. And I didn't know how to mourn that. So I didn't. Instead, I buried it. Deep. Right under the part of me that used to believe in timing and prayers in perfect endings. I never spoke his name again. Not to Raymond. Not to Mama. Not even to myself. And in time, the silence turned into something else, not peace exactly, but a kind of quiet surrender. The kind where you stop reaching for the thing you lost and just let it drift out with the tide. I think that's when I really became a mother. Not just a girl who had children, but a woman who knew what it meant to carry pain and joy at the same time. Who knew how to hold her baby close while nursing a bruise that no one could see. My love for those kids, oh, it was real. Fierce. But there was always a part of me I held back, even from them. A small aching part one kept in the dark. Folded like the old letters in the blue ribbon box I never opened again. Raymond never asked. And maybe that was his grace. Or maybe he was scared of the answer. He was a good man, steady as rain, and I was grateful for him in 1,000 quiet ways. The way he tucked Ellie in when I was too tired. The way he fixed the screen door without me a skin. The way he never once said, "I told you so." I loved him. I truly did. But there are kinds of love, child, some loud and fire-bright, some soft and slow like the turning of seasons. What I had with Raymond was winter love. Still. Strong. Necessary. But quiet. I stopped going out much. Turned down choir practice, skipped a few Sunday services. I just didn't have the energy to smile around people who remembered the girl I used to be. The one he used to sing loud at potlucks and talk about dreams bigger than cornfields. That girl was gone now, not buried, but faded. Like a name on a gravestone after too many rains. I still prayed, but my prayers got shorter. More like whispers than conversations. I wasn't angry at God, not exactly. But we weren't on speaking terms like we used to be. And I reckon that's all right. Faith doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's just getting up and feeding your kids when your heart's been split clean in two. At your pass slow, like molasses in January. The children grew, the seasons turned, and I kept moving. But deep down, I knew I wasn't the same girl anymore. The world hadn't ended, no. But mine had shifted. And there's no going back once that happens. There's just forward. Even if it's quiet. I reckon you don't always notice when life starts again. It don't come with trumpets or some grand announcement. Sometimes it's just a Tuesday and you're watching the clothes flap on the line when you feel something shift inside you. Real small like a bud pushing through dirt after a long hard frost. That's how it was for me. It wasn't a miracle or a sign. It was just Ellie tugging my skirt one afternoon, her big brown eyes looking up at me as she asked, "Mama, can we make a cake just 'cause it's today?" That girl called me Mama like she'd been born to it. And I guess by then, in every way that mattered, I was. She didn't remember her real mama much, just soft pieces and pictures. But she knew my arms, my voice, the way I kissed her scraped knees. And in that moment, standing there with flour on my hands and her laughter spilling through the kitchen like sunlight, I felt something. Not whole, not yet, but needed. And Lord knows being needed can save you when nothing else can. So we baked. Not just that day, but the next and the next. I started making pies again for the church socials. Took in hemming work for Miss Darla down the road. I even pulled out my old notebooks, the ones I'd filled with poems and Sunday school dreams, and let myself write a little. Just a line or two. But it was something. Words started coming back to me like friends I hadn't seen in years. Raymond noticed. Course he did. He didn't say much, just brought me home a new apron one day, blue with tiny white flowers, and kissed the back of my hand while I was peeling apples. He never tried to fill the silence, never asked more than I could give, but he stood by me in it steady as ever. And over time I started seeing that not all love's a thunderstorm. Some love is a porch light left on, quiet, patient, waiting for you to come home. I still had days where the grief crept up, little things would catch me off guard. An old song, the smell of smoke, a cane leaning against a church wall, but they didn't undo me the way they used to. I'd learned how to carry it. Not bury it, not erase it, just carry it. Like a scar you stop flinching at. One day, Ellie asked if I'd teach her how to write her name in cursive. I sat beside her with a pencil and paper, and as she curled those little letters, it hit me. I was teaching. Not in a classroom, not in the way I'd once dreamed, but I was teaching just the same: love, patience, grace. And that counted. Maybe more than a blackboard ever could. That was the day I let myself believe that life could be good again. Different, yes, but good. A second kind of good. Not the young, wild sort full of promises and firelight, but the kind that settles deep in your bones, quiet and warm. The kind that holds you when the wind blows hard. So I kept living. One pie, one song, one handhold at a time. And slowly, without me even knowing, a new kind of joy took root. Not the joy of what might have been, but the joy of what still could be. And maybe that's what second chances really are. Not erasing the pain, just letting the light back in. You know, I carried that story around with me like a stone in my pocket for a long, long time. Heavy and quiet. Always there, but hidden deep where no one could see. It wasn't just about Jimmy or Raymond or even about me. It was about the years lost to waiting, to hoping, to the silence that settled in after the war's smoke cleared. I held on to it because I thought if I let go, I'd be losing a piece of myself. Like that story was all I had left of the girl I once was. But one afternoon, sitting on my porch with the sun low and gold, I realized something mighty important. That story didn't own me. It never did. The pain, the waiting, the heartbreak. Sure, they were parts of me, but they weren't the whole picture. I was more than that. I was more than any one moment or mistake or loss. So I made a choice. I chose to live. Not just survive, not just get by, but really live. With my heart open, my hands ready to hold what's good, and my mind at peace with what can't be changed. I didn't have to be defined by what happened in those hard years. I could write new pages. I could breathe fresh air and let the old hurt fall away like dead leaves in the fall. It wasn't easy. It never is. Sometimes it felt like the past was a shadow I couldn't shake, a whisper at the edge of every quiet night. But I found ways to say goodbye, not to forget. No, I don't believe in forgetting the people or the moments that shaped us. But I learned to forgive myself. And that, child, is a powerful thing. One day I took that old blue ribbon box, the one with Jimmy's letters, and I opened it up on the kitchen table. I touched each letter, felt the paper soft beneath my fingers, and then I let them go. Not into the fire, not thrown away, but gently folded back in and placed in a drawer, a place where they could rest. And so could I. I realized that holding on too tight only kept the past alive in a way that hurt. Letting go didn't mean I stopped loving or remembering. It meant I was ready to carry that love differently, with grace, with peace, with a heart open enough to say, thank you for teaching me, for loving me, and for letting me be free. And from that day on, I lived differently. I stopped waiting for things that wouldn't come. I stopped asking what if and started saying what now. I made peace with the life I built with Raymond, with Ellie, with the grandchildren who call me Grandma Nell and light up my days. I found joy in the small moments, the warm tea on a chilly morning, the sound of a favorite song, the laughter around the table. That choice, to live without bitterness, without regret, it changed everything. It gave me a kind of freedom I never thought I'd have. And it gave me a gift, the chance to love myself enough to keep moving forward. So here I am, still carrying those years in my heart, but no longer carrying their weight. And if I could tell you one thing, it'd be this. Life doesn't always give us the stories we want. Sometimes it gives us the stories we need. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to choose to live fully, boldly, and with an open heart. I chose to live. And I'll tell you what, it's the best decision I ever made. You know, when I look back on all those years, the waiting, the hoping, the hurting, I don't see a story of loss as much as I see a story of learning. Not the kind you find in books or sermons, but the kind that sneaks up on you when the night's quiet and your heart spins through the fire. I learned things I never thought I'd need to know, truths that shaped me in ways I still carry every day. First, I learned that life ain't about the promises we make or the plans we write down. Life is what happens in between, the small moments, the choices we didn't expect to have to make, the roads that wind and twist without a map. Back then, I thought love was about waiting, about holding on tight until the one you cared for came back to you. But love's bigger than that. It's about letting go too. Letting go of what we thought should be so we can hold on to what is. I learned that waiting doesn't always mean the thing you wait for will come. Sometimes it means you're waiting on yourself. Waiting to find the strength to move on, to open your heart to new possibilities, to stop carrying burdens that don't belong to you anymore. And sometimes that waiting is the hardest part of all. I learned about forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. That was a hard one, the hardest maybe. I carried guilt for a long time. Guilt for the choices I made, the promises I couldn't keep, the pain I caused without meaning to. But forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It's the key that unlocks the cage you've been living in. And once I found it, I was able to breathe again. Most of all, I learned that the past doesn't have to be a prison. It can be a place of teaching, a well you draw strength from. I used to think that remembering was the same as being stuck. But it's not. Remembering, really seeing what was, can help you understand who you are now. And that understanding can set you free. So if there's anything I want to leave you with, it's this. Maybe it's time to stop waiting. Not just for a person or a moment or a chance, but for permission to live your life fully with all its twists and turns and unexpected gifts. Maybe it's time to lay down the weight you've been carrying, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's time to open your hands and your heart and see what's waiting there right now in this very moment. Because life doesn't wait for us. It keeps moving. And we've got to decide if we're gonna move with it or get left behind. I know that's easier said than done. But if there's one thing my story can teach you, it's that there's courage in choosing yourself. In choosing to live, to love, to forgive, and to hope, even when it seems like the world has gone quiet and dark. Maybe that's the real kind of love. The one that doesn't ask for forever, but for presence. The one that's not just about holding on, but knowing when to let go. So I'll leave you with this thought. What are you still waiting for? And what might happen if you finally decide to live instead? Well, now here we are, at the end of a long story, but maybe not the end of the journey. I've shared with you the years that shaped me, the waiting, the loving, the losing, and the learning. I've taken you through the valleys and the hills, the tears and the quiet moments when all that's left is a deep breath and a whispered prayer. And I hope by now you can see a little piece of yourself in all of it. Because, child, that's what stories do. It reminds us that we ain't ever truly alone. That the ache we carry, the hopes we hold close, the choices that keep us awake at night, they belong to all of us in some way or another. Now I want to ask you something. It's a question I've wrestled with for a long time, one that never got an easy answer. Do you think real love, the kind that sticks to your bones and sings in your heart, is supposed to come back? Is it meant to circle round like a song you can't forget, or is it something you have to let go, like a bird you once held too tight? I don't know if there's one right answer to that. Maybe it's different for everyone. Maybe for some, love is a quiet thing that waits patiently on the porch. And for others, it's a wild river that flows on whether you follow or not. But here's what I do know. This story, it ain't just about my past. It's about today. About every one of us carrying pieces of yesterday in our hearts, walking forward with those memories in our pockets. It's about how the choices we make now to forgive, to hope, to love ourselves can change the shape of our tomorrows. Sometimes when the house gets quiet and the night wraps around me like a soft blanket, I think about Jimmy. I wonder if he remembers. If somewhere in the quiet spaces of his own life, he thinks of that girl with the blue ribbon box and the hopeful heart. I think about that moment in church, his nod, slow and steady, full of things words couldn't say. And sometimes, just sometimes, I feel like he does. But that's a secret I keep for myself. Because stories don't always need an ending. Sometimes they just need to be told, to be held and heard and felt. And maybe that's enough. I want you to carry this story with you, not like a weight, but like a gentle light. Something to remind you that love is messy and beautiful and complicated. That life will twist and turn in ways you can't always see. And that sometimes the bravest thing we do is to keep going with an open heart and a quiet strength. So tell me, friend, what's your story? What are you holding on to? What do you need to let go of? And do you think love really does come back? Or maybe, just maybe, it never left at all. Thank you for sitting with me, for listening to this old heart's tale. And if this story touched you even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Talk about it. Let's keep these stories alive so nobody ever has to walk their journey alone. Remember, love in all its forms is worth the wait and worth the letting go.